Hello, this is Paul Matthews. I am the CEO of Netram LLC, and we provide systems integration and consulting services on Twilio. This is tutorial 13. In this tutorial, we will learn how to create an IVR for departments using Gather. This is when your business needs to look a bit professional. You need to show that you have multiple departments to the caller and possibly route those to different phone numbers. So let's say if you have a department or someone that handles your billing, and you have a separate sales team and you have a separate operations team, and if you want to route the call between the three of them, or if you want to have an external behavior uh, that shows that you have different departments, then you can use an IVR. An IVR simply gives multiple options for the caller. So this requires PHP programming, and this will be a bit involved. So please bear with me during this tutorial. The prerequisite for this tutorial is tutorial number 1, which is Hello World, and also tutorial number 8, which is forward call and then whisper. Of course, you need to know the basics of PHP programming as well, which we covered in tutorial number 12. In this tutorial, we learn how to use the gather keyword to fetch the keys that the user pressed. We will also find what is the specific key that the user pressed. We will then forward the call based on key press, and then we will whisper the department when the person answered the call. So let's take a look at the source code for this one. So once again, we will pick up the source code from the exams tutorial. We were using exam htdocs tutorial, and this is tutorial 13. So in this case, I have pre-written the source code, because going forward, our source code is going to be a bit bigger. So it's going to be too time consuming to type it up online, but the source code will be available in GitHub, so feel free to download the source code. The main source code is this XML file called mainmenu.xml. So we are familiar with the response. Here is the say. So as soon as the call is answered, we'll say welcome to Kevin's Doggy Daycare. Here is a new keyword that we have not seen before. It's the gather keyword. The action is a PHP script, and the num digits is 1. Num digits is 1 means that Twilio should wait only until one digit is pressed. After the digit is pressed, then Twilio will call this HandleInput.php and pass on the digit that was pressed. We have a few say statements. The first say says, please press 1 if you're a new customer. Please press 2 if you would like to reach billing. Please press 3 if you have left your dog with us today. And please press 4 if you'd like to hear our direction. So these are all say within gather. And then there is a say outside gather as well. The way it's going to work is, if the user did press a key, then Twilio will invoke this HandleInput.php script. If no key was pressed, then Twilio will fall back after the gather statement, and Twilio will actually say this say statement. So the caller will hear, sorry, we have not received any input from you, please try again. And then here is a redirect. Redirect will simply redirect back to the same URL. So if the user did not press a key, then the user is then Twilio will fetch the main menu.xml file once again, and then the entire sequence will follow. So in this specific example, this sequence will follow infinitely as long as the caller did not hang on. In real life, you may want to put some bounds on it. So if somebody called in and opened the line, this does not stay infinitely. In fact, actually, I take that back. It's not infinite. Twilio does have a maximum call duration limit, and Twilio will hang up the call to that maximum call duration. But that's in the tune of hours, and you don't want to be billed for that incoming call for that duration. So usually you would want to put some restrictions on it, and that usually requires some programming. So let's understand a little bit about this gather. So we have this action and num digit. So let's look at gather from Twilio's tutorial and understand what these are and what some of these other parameters are. So let's search for Twilio gather. And here is Twilio gather. So gather has several attributes. One of them is the action attribute, which we have used. The other attribute is the num digits attribute, which we have used. So let's look into these two attributes, input, not input. So let's look back at the action attribute. Here is the action attribute. It says that the action attribute is called when the caller finishes entering the digits, and Twilio will make an HTTP request to this URL. And this URL will include the user's data and Twilio's standard request parameters. So let's understand what does it include. So it says here, if you gather digits from the caller, Twilio will include the digits parameter. So that's key. It's the digit parameter that Twilio uses. The next attribute to look for is the num digits, which is right here. Here is the num digits, and it says that you can set the number of digits you expect from your caller. Since we said num digits is 1, as soon as you have entered 1 digit, Twilio will not wait to gather any more digit, and Twilio will call your action URL. So that's about gather. And then the next keyword, which we may not have seen before, is the redirect keyword. And let's look at redirect. Here is redirect. The redirect verb transfers control to the TWIML on a different URL. In our case, we have just simply closed the redirect, so it redirects to the same URL. So if we had put a URL here, Twilio would have redirected to that URL, and then we'll see some of those examples later. In this case, Twilio is simply going to redirect back to the same URL. So now let's look at this HandleInput.php, which handles the actual input. So that we can open the HandleInput.php. Here is the HandleInput.php. This is written in PHP. We have passed on the header saying that this is an XML file. It's not mandatory, but it is recommended. If you add this PHP header, you can see the XML output very well in the browser, and we'll take a look at all of those. So here is the response. So in this case, we are waiting for this digit parameter that Twilio has passed. As we saw in Twilio's example, the action URL does include the action. When Twilio calls the action URL, it does include a digits parameter, which is the actual digits that's passed, and we have restricted the number of digits to 1. So we're going to get only 1 digit, and we're going to switch on this input. If the user pressed 1, we will issue a dial statement. This is the dial that we're familiar with. It has the number, and in the number we are passing the URL. And then we saw that this URL that is passed will be invoked and be played to the person who was called. So this is the number that is called 302-440-4084. And then when this number is called and this person and this number answered, the whisper.php URL will be involved, and we're passing a parameter called department equals new, and we'll look at whisper.php and see what it does with this parameter of new. So that is option number 1. This is option number 2. In option number 2, we are doing the same thing. We're calling the same number, and then we are saying the department is billing. In option number 3, we're calling the same number, and then we're saying the department is existing. These numbers could be different. So these departments could actually dial to different phone numbers. Now, the option number 4 was the location. So option number 4 was to hear the direction. We are not going to forward that call to anyone. Instead of that, we are going to say the location. We are going to say the location is 375 Beale Street in San Francisco. 375 Beale Street happens to be Twilio's headquarters. Now, if the user pressed any other key, then we are going to say it's an invalid option. Please try again. And then here is the redirect, but we are going to redirect to main menu. So it will play back the options from the beginning if the user pressed a digit, but it's different from what we expect. Keep in mind that that is different from the fallback at the say. This say gets invoked if the user does not press any key, and it is the default option for a PHP switch is when the user pressed a different key other than 1 to 4. So let's try, before we actually play around this with Twilio, let us try to view this in a browser. And before we do that, we need to start ngrok. So here is ngrok. This is the URL. So we will use this URL. Oh, the reason why we are not able to start it is because we have not started XAMPP. Let's start XAMPP. Here is XAMPP. We have started XAMPP now. So XAMPP listens on port 80. And we are at tutorial number 13. So this is tutorial 13. And this is the main menu. So this is the XML response for main menu. Now let's try to look at the XML response for handle input. So we will type in handle underscore input dot php, and as we saw, we were looking at this digits attribute that Twilio would pass. So instead of Twilio passing, let's try to pass that digit attribute and see what Twilio responds. Digits equal to 1. So there we can see the output that this PHP script generated. We can see that here whisper.php is the URL against number, and that's the number type. So if you put 2 as the digits, it's a different department. Department is billing. If you put 3, the department is existing. And if we put 4, then we will see the response with say, which says we are located in 375 Beale Street. If we give an invalid input, which is 5, we'll see the XML response. It says that's an invalid response, and here is the redirect to main menu.xml. Now let's try and look at the whisper .php file. So here is the whisper.php file. Here, this is whisper. Again, this is the PHP header. This is the XML response. This is the say. This is the portion that's the PHP script, and we are going to get this department parameter that was passed on to Whisper, and then we will simply echo that. So it will say call for and then the department name. So let's try to play that as well. So it's actually quite simple. We can just copy and paste this URL to the top. So here is the response. The response is call for billing. So that completes it. Again, there are three main components to this. One is the Whisper. We have passed on the department's name to Whisper. The other one is the handle input, and this script gets called when the user presses a button on the phone. And then there is, of course, the main script as well. And the main script is main menu. So now we need to install this script to Twilio. So we'll just copy and paste that URL, and then go into our Twilio console, go into numbers, and use this number. And then we'll edit it. And we'll paste that URL. We are done with pasting that URL, and now pasting the URL. Now we should be able to make a call. So let's try making a call and listen to what happens. We'll keep the main menu here, and I'll kind of follow along the scripts as it goes. So let's try the first case. Let's try the call again.
Welcome to Kevin's Doggy Daycare. Please press 1 if you are a new customer. Please press 2. If you would like to reach billing, please press 3. If you have left your dog with us today, please press 4. If you would like to hear our directions.
So now we are not going to see anything. It should fall back to this say statement, and it should redirect.
We have not received any input from you. Please try again. Welcome to Kevin's Doggy Daycare. Please press 1 if you are a new customer. Please press 2. If you would like to reach billing, please press 3. If you have left your dog with us today, please press 4. If you would like to hear our directions.
We're going to press 4 for directions.
We are located in 375 Beale Street in San Francisco.
So that did complete it. Let's just do a trace on Twilio to see how this call actually worked. And this is actually quite helpful for debugging and troubleshooting. So once again, we go to Twilio, we go into call logs, and this is the call that was made. We'll click on the call. This is the first response that Twilio received. And then the user did press, the user actually did not say anything. So what happened is that it did the redirect, and the same URL was called again. The same announcement was made once again. And then the caller did press a button on the phone. So here is the digits attribute, which is 4. And then this is the response, which said we are located in 375 Beale Street, which, as I said, happens to be Twilio's address. So it's this digits parameter that we use. If we look at ngrok, we should be able to see the parameter that Twilio passed to us. So that's interesting. So let's take a look. This is the handle input. These are the parameters that Twilio passed to our script. Here is the digits with 4. And then this is the response that our web server provided. So that is the case when the option 4 for location was pressed. Now let's try the other option, which is forwarding to a different number.
Welcome to Kevin's Doggy Daycare. Please press 1 if you are a new
I'm going to press
customer.
1.
Please press 2 if you would like to reach billing. Please press 3 if you have.
I have answered the call. Let's try again.
Daycare. Please press 1 if you are a new customer. Please press 2 if you would like to reach billing. Please press
I'm going to
3
dial
if
2.
you have left your dog with us.
Here's the call. I've answered the call, and the billing was sent to the callee. Let's look at the output from Twilio. So this is going to be the call log at Twilio. Call logs. Here's the outgoing call. Here's the outgoing call, and this is the response. It's a call for billing. And that's how the other side heard call for billing. This is the incoming call. The user pressed 1, and when 1 was pressed, this is the response. It did have a dial, and here is the number, and here is the whisper.php URL, which was announced to this 302 number. So that completes this tutorial. We did learn how to use gather to fetch the digits that was pressed on the phone. We then figured out how to look at the digits attribute to find out the key that was pressed. And then we figured out how to forward the call on a key press and also to whisper the department. That completes this tutorial. Thank you.